Hello, brief intro because the other one that I filmed was I accidentally recorded the whole thing on my laptop when it was connected to my headphones, so the audio was just messed up. But basically, I was saying that I was gonna have use this video to keep me accountable because I have this massive workload task right now for my research assistant job, and it is so horribly time consuming, and I needed to get a little bit of that done. Um, but I was out today and I really had such a good thought session, thinking, question asking session on ChatGPT, and I wanted to delve into some of the topics that I was thinking about. So I worked a little bit. Yeah, I was saying that I'm gonna work a little bit on that, and once I'm done with that, I'm coming back to work on my personal project, but spoiler alert, I ended up not finishing the other task that I was supposed to do because it was getting late and I really wanted to work on this. Okay, I'm not quite done with that activity I was referring to, but it's already 11:50 p.m. and I thought about just waiting till tomorrow to work on this, but it's getting to the point where I'm literally not going to be able to sleep if I don't work on it because it's going to be taking over my whole mind and I'm going to feel unsettled. So I have to work on it a little bit just to feel, I don't know, normal. But I was having a really good, like, I don't know, thinking session earlier today. I went to Pret to actually work on this other thing. And then I was having technical difficulties. I had to wait for my headphones. So I ended up working on this instead. And then I got really deep into a thought process. So I was rereading and putting the notes back in for this text that I'm gonna show you right now. Okay, this is the text. The role of acetylcholine. Um, I hope that's right. Let's look it up. Okay, so the text that I was reading was actually this one right here. The role of acetylcholine in learning and memory. And I already read this text the other day, but I was transferring all of the information into my big document with all of my notes, which is always a good chance for me to sort of reread and get a second perspective on what I think is important. So this text is basically talking about, well, the overall trend is how acetylcholine, um, how what the part that it plays in the encoding of new memories. But it was going into this whole entire exploration of something called cholinergic receptors, um, and blocking the blockade of those receptors by drugs such as scopolamine. I didn't know what those things were actually. I was kind of just reading, looking for things that I was kind of working around that as I was reading the text. I didn't think I read this really late at night, so I didn't take the extra chance to sort of understand this. But I'm gonna go into my other tab now. So cholinergic receptors are proteins found on neurons or other cells that respond specifically to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. So they play major roles in learning, memory, attention, and neuromodulation throughout the brain and body, which is exactly what I am studying, what I'm looking for. And it basically went in and explained them to me. And yeah, so then it did start to tell me the thing about ChatGPT is it'll start to tell me information like this, and it obviously doesn't back it with the text. So I have the task then to sort of make sure that that's um backed by a specific text. Or for example, sometimes I wonder if maybe it's connecting things, it's making jumps that might be right based on the fact that I've given it other information. But I don't know, is there an actual text yet that talks about acetylcholine and sharp wave ripple generation? I need to find that if there is one. But anyways, but it did say it tries to relate everything to my project because that's what this whole tab has been for. But they say that it modulates hippocampal activity, which I know that's true because I read that, and sharp wave ripple generation. High acetylcholine levels suppress the sharp wave ripples, so that stops the encoding from happening. And then the low acetylcholine levels, so during non-REM sleep, allow the sharp wave ripples to happen, enabling memory consolidation, which is exactly what was being talked about. Had it in another video, but that's why I've been studying these neuromodulators the last few weeks. So, and I did see this in a text. So basically, disruptions to the cholinergic system can impair memory, learning, or contribute to dissociation-like phenomena. So, I need to read more, but what I've been wondering recently is I've been wanting to narrow it down into the right neuromodulator because what ChatGPT told me before is that there are multiple different, I guess that different neuromodulators basically um actually ChatGPT didn't tell me this. I took this from a text and had ChatGPT explain it to me. So it was from a text about hippocampal sharp wave ripples, and it was basically explaining that they are that the sharp wave ripples basically are sort of controlled by the neuromodulator. So when there's exactly what it says here. So when they're suppressed, the sharp wave ripples are not encoding, and when they're not suppressed, the memories start to encode, right? So that was my main thinking was like I should go straight there, sort of, and try to figure out what um how these neuromodulators work so I can put them in my neural network. Then I started to read about all these different types of neuromodulators, but this one, when I was reading, I read a research article about all these different types of neuromodulators, and how they sort of relate to, I think it was relating to trauma, or it might have just been a general review, but I anchored in on this one because I think they were talking about memory consolidation. So, anyways, so that's why I've been here. At first I was kind of thinking maybe, who knows, maybe this isn't the right one, and I'm now at a point where I'm so attached to my project that I want to make sure that I'm precise and that I get the right thing. You get me? So, anyways, but I didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to make the wrong jump and just jump into some neuromodulator that doesn't make sense or isn't the right one, or maybe there's something that could be more specific or better. But anyways, so then I was asking about, I think I was asking about this medication that they mentioned in the text, and I asked if it's suppressed or if it made it if they made the acetylcholine stronger or lesser, you know? And it did say that it suppressed the acetylcholine, which was necessary for me to understand the text. What I'm a little bit confused about is that this medication suppresses acetylcholine, but somehow that causes disruptions in memory, attention, and hippocampal dependent learning. So I might ask ChatGPT right now in this video, like, why is it doing that if usually that, okay, I'll show you in a second. Anyways, so then I started to ask because what I was thinking is that some of these neuromodulators that I'm looking at, I know that when they have too much, like when we have, I wondered if the overproduction of them, particularly because I saw that one of them that I'm not remembering the name off the top of my head, but I know that one of them is overactive all the time in people with PTSD, even in sleep. It's not this one, it's another one. But I thought maybe is that related to stress and the way that we feel stressed. So I asked, what does too much acetylcholine feel like? And it did tell me about something called cholinergic excess. So basically, too much acetylcholine can lead to a range of physical, cognitive, and emotional symptoms. Um, the state can occur due to overstimulation of these receptors, which I guess I should read about that. And it often feels overwhelming or dysregulated. So cognitive and psychological effects, we have mental fog or confusion, impaired memory consolidation, difficulty focusing, anxiety, restlessness, or irritability, and in some extreme cases, hallucinations or delirium. Um, and then there's other symptoms. I am wanting to know if maybe this cholinergic excess, if I read into that a little bit, if that's gonna give me some insight. I'm just trying to get right to the chemical function that would cause all of this to happen. I might pull out the big pad of paper right now and we might talk about a lot of different themes and so that I can understand them well. But first we're gonna ask ChatGPT some questions because it's just getting a little bit like serious. I don't know. Just seeming a little bit like a really crucial moment in my project. So, okay, so for example, my first question here, scopolamine suppresses this, but but high but usually the high acetylcholine levels. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, so they usually suppress the sharp wave ripples. So why does scopolamine cause amnesia then? Shouldn't it be the opposite? I might just not be understanding this. Like maybe my brain is just like tired and I'm not fully grasping. These are important questions because I think they'll help me understand. ChatGPT is getting so irritating. I have to like constantly reload it. Okay, let's see. So the high, oh, okay. So the high levels suppress the sharp wave ripples, which are essential for offline memory consolidation. Yeah, so that was like my question. I was like, okay, why? Because okay, so let me explain to you. So when there's a high level of this drug, right, of this neuromodulator, it basically suppresses sharp wave ripples. Well, that's what it's saying here, which are essential for offline memory consolidation. So it's necessary for that neuromodulator to go down when you're resting and sleeping for you to encode memories, right? But this drug right here is an acetylcholine antagonist. So in theory, what I would think, right, would be that in decreasing the acetylcholine, the memories would encode, but somehow that drug causes amnesia instead. So it's doing kind of the opposite thing. Okay, so the acetylcholine plays a critical role in learning and attention during wakefulness. Without it, the brain can't properly encode new information in the first place. So even if the sharp wave ripples are later allowed, there's nothing. Oh, okay. Oh, I think I understand. So because the acetylcholine is it's doing other things in the day, and then at night it goes away so that we can encode everything. But if there's no acetylcholine in the day, then we can't learn anything. That's why when I was reading this, it did say that this has really been testing my logic skills, I would say, more than anything. I feel like this has been just like this intense logic game that I've been playing, like, I don't know, trying to like piece everything together. It basically said that these drugs impair the encoding of new memories, but not the retrieval of previously stored memories. So that's important. Now I understand why that is. So it's because I was looking at this and thinking that's strange. Why is it not affecting the retrieval of memories? So, okay, so it's basically just impairing new memories from happening, but what I'm interested in is whether the old memories or the things you learn in the day or whatever are coming up. Destabilizes, okay, so acetylcholine is also involved in modulating hippocampal theta rhythms, which are essential for initial coding and navigation of memory space. Okay, so it's basically just blocking the replay. And then when it's lower at night, then the replay can happen. Okay, we're gonna keep asking questions here. These are questions that I'll probably run into again from text, but I want to know now. So I just want to understand and then I can read everything also in the text that I'm finding, but sometimes it helps me because I want to get a basic understanding of how things work so that I can read the text better because sometimes the texts are written assuming that you already have a really thorough knowledge of neuroscience and I don't always have all the information that I need, but I can understand enough to get questions like this. You get me? So been like a massive challenge. It's really been mentally challenging, but in a fun way. Anyways, okay, sharp-wave ripples are responsible for both encoding and replay, right? So why is acetylcholine causing encoding? And is that through a mechanism that's not sharp-wave ripples? I was also going to talk about, so while I'm waiting, basically, this has also been really helping me understand how to write my methods section because I was really nervous about the method section. I wasn't sure how my method was going to look until today because I asked ChatGPT in a much earlier phase of this project what it thought my method section should be like. And it gave me something, but it was a little bit messy. Like I was just looking at it and I was like, I'll see if I can find it to show you, but I was just like, this is a little bit much and I've never seen a study designed like this. It was just kind of um Yeah, I'll see if I can find it to show you. But I was like, I was like, is this right? Like, I literally asked it. I was like, I've never seen a study design like this before. Is this like valid? I mean, it said it was good, and I was like, I would be curious, but to know it like this. But let me see if I can ask it again. Like, can you bring back up the? I think it honestly, it's not even ChatGPT's fault because I think I didn't have all the information yet, so I think there was a little bit less to say. I don't know. But or just I think it was I was forcing ChatGPT to make jumps that it didn't have all the information, you get me? So, but now it seems pretty simple. Like on my walk home, I was like, oh, that simplifies it so much. All I have to do is basically do one with the like I guess a control group in the neural network that's just normal like let's say I make it the acetylcholine, it's like normal amount versus abnormal amount, or done in a disrupted way versus not disrupted way. I think that's seeming much more simple now. Like, let me show you. This was what it had. I asked, what is the method that it had designed, right? So back then I asked, you want to simulate how the sense of self narrative is formed from memories and how disrupting the sharp wave ripple timing affects this process, potentially modeling dissociative symptoms like fragmentation. So it told me build the memory system and representation, um, add a self narrative module, implement sharp wave ripples and clocking. This is all it told me back then about sharp wave ripples and clocking, just to give you a sense, because now we're going into this really complex thing. There's like neuromodulators and there's like interneurons and all of these things that are probably going to show up in my final method. But back then it was just um add a module to stimulate sharp wave ripple bursts using oscillatory activity. See, it didn't tell me anything like that. It didn't tell me like do interneuron, like make interneurons and that will be your timing sequence, nothing like that. And then long-term memory transfer. I think by then I had already asked it for that. Um, and then disruption phase. See, again, it's like disrupt the timing, but we didn't back then, like I'm saying we, like ChatGPT is like a person to me now. I hadn't really I didn't have the understanding of how the timing would be thrown off. Like I was just like the timing is thrown off, but now I'm making it extremely more biologically accurate. Oh, it didn't explain to me the formal, let's see. It's not bringing it up. It never told me this before ever. I don't understand why it's pretending like it told me this. It's never told me this before. Probably useful for me still, but that's not what we talked about. That's fine, ChatGPT. But anyways, it gave me a really crazy method that it was like three different like levels, and like they were all like I was basically going to be running it three different times, but each of the times was going to have the sharp wave ripples thrown off more and more. I don't know, it was a little bit strange. I think it was just basing it off of what I was thinking, but I wasn't to the level of complexity needed. So goes to show that again, a constant theme has just been like you need to be the one to give ChatGPT the level of complexity that you want it to meet you at, and you can't just expect it to give you all the details because it's not going to do that for you. Even though in theory it can know all this information, and in theory it knows everything about all of the neuromodulators, interneurons, everything, but it took me guiding it there to put all the pieces in ChatGPT's face for it to start giving me examples, you get me? So anyways, okay, so let's go back to our question. So sharpwave ripples are responsible for both encoding and replay, right? Oh, but for both encoding and replay, right? So why is this acetylcholine causing encoding, and is that through a mechanism that's not sharp wave ripples? Okay, I think that was me understanding a little bit wrong. I was confusing encoding with consolidation, and consolidation is a different thing. Okay, that's interesting, the online offline idea. So sharp wave ripples are not online encoding, they're offline. So during rest, quiet wakefulness, and slow wave sleep, and help replay previous neural activity to stabilize memory traces. So it's replaying things that happened in the day, it's replaying things that happened in the past to basically make the memory traces stronger and like burrow them in so that you actually remember them. Sharp wave ripples are not real-time encoding, but the acetylcholine, basically the high levels during the day, promote encoding by enhancing the this cortex, so hippocampus, new sensory info, suppressing the CA3 collateral, so the memory replay part, and suppressing the sharp wave ripples. So, yeah, so I guess you want to save that brain space for the day to basically be learning new things. You don't want to be sitting there during the day going over old things, which that is what happens in PTSD. So I'm always making these jumps. I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that I have all the information, but I think that's kind of the problem there is that you're spending a lot of active time in the day going sort of sitting with old memories, old information instead of actually taking in new information and yeah. But anyways, I understand. So by shifting the network mode towards external input processing. So it's causing a different type of amnesia. This scopolamine, it's not causing the kind of amnesia you see in dissociative amnesia. It's causing what's called anterograde amnesia. People with dissociative amnesia, now if you're in a dissociative state all day, that's a different thing. But actually, people with dissociative identity disorder, what happens with them is that they will be, I guess, heavily dissociated throughout the day, or maybe their dissociation falls under different patterns. But for example, they might meet somebody while in an alter state, and then later on in the day, they don't remember that person, meeting them on a different day. I read one in one of the texts I spoke about previously that had all these different case studies about people with dissociative amnesia and generalized amnesia. I found this one pretty interesting, but there is somebody with a sort of dissociative identity disorder, dissociative amnesia, and what they were doing was that they were convinced that their neighbor was sending them cards, like nasty, rude cards with like threatening information. And because they would get these cards, and then later on, they looked at the cameras, like they looked at what was recorded from this lady's cameras at her house. And it turns out she had been purchasing cards, writing herself these cards, and then completely forgetting that she'd ever done it. So, yeah, I think it's a different type of amnesia though. It doesn't usually dissociative amnesia doesn't necessarily stop you from learning new memories. So you might not remember a part of your one part of your life, but you can still make new memories. If you guys are interested, you can go back to one of my old videos that I'll put like up here where I was reading some generalized amnesia text and reading some like some case studies of different people with generalized amnesia, and it's pretty interesting. You can still learn a lot. You can still have a good sort of sense of the world, but still have generalized amnesia. Um, so I think that might actually even be something for me to talk about. So in my I might let's jump to my other document really quick because I think that's a good thing to mention. This rough draft is not actually a rough draft. It's just me messily putting down. I mean, I guess it is a rough draft in that sense, but I actually even moved a lot of this stuff to a different document, but it was just for me to have a sense of everything that needs to go in. So it's really a lot of Bessie notes. I've actually already made a better outline, but I'm gonna go ahead and write here that um I might want to talk about the different types of amnesias. So then I can like truly link it to specific stuff. It's getting cool. I mean, I think at this point in my project, it's starting to like, I'm getting a really solid sense of what my paper is actually going to look like now. Like, I think I'm getting a better sense of what my method section is going to look like and also just how my paper needs to be structured. So anyways, okay, so that's been good. I actually just feel like I need to process. So I've been reading a lot of real like new themes and ideas for me. It's like this is so much more technical than anything I've ever done. I didn't study, wasn't like a STEM student in school. So again, I'm understanding it because I've just had a really good sense of what's happening overall, but it's still like a lot of information for me to take in. So I think it's still good for me right now to sit a little bit and see if we can put some ideas together. Really quick, I'm going to show you some of the texts that are coming up for me that I'll probably read in the next few days. I want to read about this cholinergic overdrive idea. cholinergic vulnerability. We got cholinergic overstimulation, attenuates role selectivity in macro prefrontal cortex. And then cholinergic signaling shapes nervous system function and behavior. I have like, I don't know, I have some abstract ideas that are like floating, and I just want to see if I can put them into words. And then we also have this one that's just a neurotransmitter for learning and memory. People have done a lot. It seems like the big connection people have been making with this particular neuromodulator has been in like dementia, Alzheimer's. So that's pretty interesting, I guess. That's all the texts have really been focused on that. I think that actually some of the reason is that this medication that I was reading about is called what's it called again? Scopolamine. It's actually, I think, an Alzheimer's medication. It might be for different things, but I saw that when people had like the this cholinergic overdrive, whatever. I think it in oh well, it seems connected to antidepressants too, but it did seem really specifically connected in a lot of places to Alzheimer's medications. I think one of my big questions here is that if I can get this solid and if I can make a solid connection, it would be so cool to be able to finally have a medication for dissociation symptoms specifically and for dissociative disorders. Because I don't know, I mean, if that's something we want to do, because the thing is that it's really hard. You can treat one of the really hard things about a disorder like dissociative identity disorder is that you can treat things from a psychological standpoint, like through conversation, through therapy. You can treat like the peripheral symptoms. You can treat, for example, depression with an antidepressant or anxiety with an anxiety medication, but you cannot actually treat the dissociative symptoms. You can't, there's no medication for dissociation at all. So it would be really cool if there could be a central mechanism to sort of start burrowing into that is chemical, and that would open up a doorway to start experimenting with some different medications. And that would be really, really cool. And that's just been something I've been sitting with throughout this process that I didn't think I was really going to get to this point, but I'm like, wow, this chemical approach would be really good. Okay, here we are in my neuroscience lab, aka my minuscule bedroom. I have this is my classic ginormous pad of paper that I love writing on for some reason. Like, I just feel like I think so well. So I'm gonna be transferring some of the terms that we learned in the last video into this giant pad of paper, and I'm gonna be drawing things. I'm gonna be just trying to understand how each and everything works. But before I get into it, I just wanted to chat a little bit more about that medication thing, because I've really been sitting with it and being just really reflecting on what it would look like for us to medicate something like dissociative amnesia or dissociative identity disorder. And it's a bit difficult because the reason people suppress memories or people suppress difficult experiences in part is because they're so horribly difficult to deal with. And I just wonder about what the experience would be like to start suddenly unsuppressing a lot of things at once, or, you know, to reopen that sort of doorway to all your memories at once. The reason that dissociative identity, for example, people with dissociative identity or disorder, it takes them so long to heal because it's some of the things that people are suppressing or that are getting sort of turned into alters. It's so difficult for them to deal with, and it's a really long process because people will maybe work through one memory and then all of a sudden they'll get really suicidal. It's really difficult for them. It's like this really long process, and it takes, from what I've read, I imagine it would take so much strength to go through that process. And yeah, I've just been thinking about that and what treatment would look like, and I was like, it would have to be extremely I feel like it would have to be extremely well. Like you can't. It's not just oh you're gonna take it and then you're gonna go home and not go to therapy all week. I think in my head like it would have to be a really well observed process, and like you'd have to really be working with a clinician like very closely, because I think to suddenly get a flooding of things that you've been suppressing would be really intense. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't medicate it, because for example, I don't know, it's like some people maybe who are struggling with generalized amnesia or dissociative amnesia, like maybe it's like, well, I'd rather just know. I don't know. So I've just been thinking about what it would look like to treat this clinically, and I just think it would how you'd have to definitely be working really closely also with a psychiatrist, with a therapist, as you do that medication, if the medication were to come to exist. I think it's one of those things where like you it kind of gets worse before it gets better. That's why personally, even though I struggle with anxiety, I haven't rushed to take an anxiety medication per se, because I have thought greatly about this and the idea that maybe for me an anxiety medication might, in getting into that relaxed state, maybe would bring up a lot for me. Unlike someone who's just experiencing anxiety, like generalized anxiety, they might, it might just ease their symptoms, but for me, maybe it might make my symptoms worse. That's why I haven't rushed to take a more consistent. I did used to take an anxiety medication like as needed, but even then, I think I would usually sometimes I would feel a little bit worse, because I'd have things that I sort of wasn't sitting with in the day. Sometimes they would come up to deal with, so it didn't necessarily make me feel like, oh, I just feel better, but sometimes it was just, gave me a little bit of more access to the things that were giving me that stress throughout the day that I couldn't really deal with. So anyways, so that's why I say to, yeah, that's why I've been having this thought process about the medication for dissociative experiences, and how it would definitely be a process of like, it's gonna make you feel worse, but then you're gonna feel much, much better. Okay, not that exciting to see, but I basically was just rewriting some of the key points about interneurons and just how they work. So about how they inhibit things, they inhibit the pyramidal neurons and keep them from being chaotic, encourage them to fire in coordinated patterns, etc., etc. So they're modulating other neurons and reducing their chance of firing. So I'm trying, what my main question is what does the timing sequence look like? I know that interneurons are responsible for that timing sequence, and I guess I'm starting to be able to imagine it a little bit better in my head. So I guess bad timing would mean things are getting not suppressed, or we'll see. I basically just asked ChatGPT right now to explain to me, using those terms now, how proper timing looks. So we're going to go back into Zoom. Okay, so how would proper timing look using the terms inhibitory neurons, pyramidal neurons, etc.? So here we go. So there's, when it's properly timed, so there's a resting or pre-sharp wave ripple phase. Oh, they're even using cholinergic tone. That's cool. So cholinergic tone is low, allowing the sharp wave ripples to emerge. The pyramidal neurons are relatively quiescent, but ready to fire in coordinated bursts. So they're not that, like, they're not doing anything much yet, but the chemical goes down, meaning that the sharp wave ripples start to emerge. And okay, starting to imagine it. Sharp wave ripple initiation in CA3. So recurrent excitation among starts the sharp wave. So they start to be like, the pyramidal neurons start first. And then this excitation travels to the CA1 pyramidal neurons. And then the synchronization by interneurons, PV plus basket cells. So it starts with excitation, and then the interneurons get to work. So yeah, the highly coordinated burst, encoding or replaying specific neural patterns. See how they use the term encoding, but anyways, remember earlier I asked it about encoding and it was like, no, it doesn't encode. But oh well, I understand. So okay, so it needs to have these really intense sharp bursts, basically. So okay, so then that means that probably, since the excitation starts first, probably the coordination, because it needs we're gonna double check this. Probably what's happening is because it needs to be a really sharp burst. If the burst is not sharp like that, maybe it's not encoding. Tend to fire at specific phases of the ripple cycle. The interneurons keep the network locked in rhythm through fast inhibitory feedback loops. And then after the ripple, the inhibition rises to make sure that everything doesn't go crazy. So, bad timing, I think that's probably going to be my big question, and basically my question also with the neuromodulators. So that might be this is like sometimes I go through and then I get like a really like general sort of sense. Like remember when I said the sharp wave, like the timing sequence versus now I have a really in-depth sense of the timing sequence. Yeah, I mean it's saying so this that so I'm probably gonna get like a lesser sense, but it'll build. So if inhibition is too strong, this pyramidal cells don't fire together. If the bin inhibition is too weak, the pyramidal cells fire out of sync or too often. That's what I was saying. Okay. So one of these things right here is causing the dissociation symptoms or the lack of encoding. Maybe both. Okay, I think I've gotten to the point where I think I need to sleep on it and keep reading my text. The next thing I need to understand well is going to be the neuromodulators and what exactly they're doing so that I can see what's going to be thrown off and what that's going to look like. Because I think we have here, I mean, I was going to ask what does bad timing look like, but I think this is it. Either the inhibition is too strong and the cells don't fire together, or inhibition is too weak. So they have to burst to get, they have to create a really coordinated burst. Maybe the cholinergic excess isn't even going to be relevant. Okay, anyways, now I'm just talking. We're done for the night. I worked probably about an hour, but it was a really focused hour. I think I've gotten enough here. And my main thing today was that I really wanted to understand these terms more, like the vocabulary. And honestly, I do think that I got a, a more like intuitive sense of what they mean and how they work. But I didn't go into these neurotransmitters that much yet, but that's okay. That can be for another day. Anyways, okay. Good night. We're done. I don't know what else to say.